I'm sure you guys are pretty confused and uncertain right now because the emails we've gotten from the university about what's going to happen in case of COVID-19 are pretty vague and not very helpful or specific. So today I'm going to basically give you some certainty on that because I have a very good idea what's going to happen. And I definitely know what's going to happen for this class because I'm in charge of this class. So I can provide you that level of certainty. First and foremost, that is what's going to happen. The professors are being given a lot of leeway as what to do, but we are officially following the CDC, IHE COVID-19 guidelines. Right. That sounds like a bunch of code word stuff, but it just means Institutes of Higher Education is IHE, CDC is the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, and we're basically following this document over here on this, which is basically the guidance they have for institutions of higher education, which is essentially has two subsets of stuff: guidance for institutes of higher education that do not have COVID-19 identified in their community, which is us right now, and then there's a set of guidance for if you have COVID-19 within your community. Considering there's some cardiologist is now in critical condition who is treating at CHOP in King of Prussia, there's probably a ton of undetected cases. This is because the testing kit situation in the United States is all FUBAR. Yes. Woohoo! All right. So, but essentially, what we're at the latest, we're waiting for essentially Philadelphia to come down and basically start putting in quarantine measures. That's the latest point I think that we're campus. So campus will not be closed. That's important. The research is too valuable to close campus. But what we're doing is that we are going to basically suspend in-class meetings. That's what's going to happen. Courses, learning will still continue. And in fact, that's what a lot of your professors are being directed to do, which is prepare to transition to online courses, to basically online teaching for the duration of whatever that is. Campus can't be closed because some of you live on campus and you need to eat, and you need to sleep, and you need preferably do so indoors. So preferably. I have no idea. That's going to be up to. I am not privy to that decision. My estimation is that will be sometime. It will be sometime next week at the latest. That is my estimation. I'm not a healthcare official. This is just my best guess. Yes, and then yes.
So does that mean do you think the tech center or recreational facilities will still be open?
Probably. That's my guess. The goal here is to prevent spread by basically not having people in contact by minimizing large group contacts like this, right? So first off, if I cough, that basically hits all y'all right over there. So you're in the splash zone. So anyway, So here's if classes are suspended. So if there's a student, staff, or faculty member attended class or was active on campus prior to being conferred as COVID-19, right? Determine if or when, how long IHE may need to suspend classes or postpone and cancel events or activities. So most likely, things will be. You can check out this document yourself, which are basically says develop these kinds of plans that are specific to your university. So let me just state, how scared should you be? A little. Just a little. Don't start going going out and buying toilet paper, a ton of toilet paper from Costco. That is this is like the pandemic version of getting bread and milk, when it snows. Yes?
But it hit kids and old people, right?
It's not hitting kids.
Oh, it's not hitting kids? Just old people?
People under 9
Yeah, the 90%, from what we can see from the research, 90, and again, I'm not an epidemiologist, do not take what I'm saying as the gospel truth. It does not. It does not affect children, or it does not seem to be affecting children severely. The vast majority of cases of fatalities are skewed to those who are older. So in other words, your professors have more to fear from it than you guys. That's not to say, but it also affects the immunocompromised, right? And those so also the fatality rate is fairly high, which is like somewhere between 2 and 4%. But that number might come down as we identify basically more people who have mild cases, because the mild cases seem to resemble a cold, from what I understand. Again, I'm going to caveat that from what I understand, and what I've got can be very different than what reality. Yes? Oh, that is an excellent question. I can answer that for this class, but for your other classes, I can't really answer that, although that was in discussion today. Obviously, coming in for class, if in-class meetings are suspended, that would also mean your labs are suspended as well. And if you're dealing with like physics or like chemistry, where you need reagents to blow stuff up or something, do all the fun stuff in chemistry, you can't really, we don't recommend doing that at home, is the point. So one solution that was talked about at the meeting that I was at today was the professors might come in and record a session of them doing the lab and then giving you the data and you can work on the data yourself. Or they might just be canceled up to that throughout that point. But there are contingencies in being discussed, is the point. That will vary from professor to professor. So let me go ahead and then just give you clarity about what's going to happen in this class then, before we can start out it. So this class, once we transition to online, I'll start recording. I will basically try to make this a flipped classroom as quick, basically as best as I can. The idea here is that I'll start creating videos that are equivalent to your lectures that I would do. I'll separate them into 15-minute chunks and upload them onto YouTube for you to watch for that week. So basically you'll have about 2 hours of video a week to watch, and then you'll be expected to do the lab exercises. For online class meetings, we're going to see how that's going to go. In fact, part of what we're going to do today is test out Zoom in class, which is the technology that we'll be using to basically do, or that a lot of your professors will be doing to, has any of the professors that you've went to tried out Zoom in class yet? Nope? You did that 3 times today. Yeah, so, well, I don't know who else hasn't done it, so I don't know who hasn't done it, but Zoom is going to be the most likely way of doing that. So what will happen is that if we do online meetings, it will most likely be the case of like what we did with what we were doing with a lot of the times where we were doing an in-class exercise where I'll say, okay, this is what we're doing. Let's take 10 minutes to try to do this. If you got there, great. If you didn't get there, here's the answer. Let's move on to the next portion of it. So doing things like that. So trying to basically emulate the in-class experience as much as possible. Now, if you do not have a laptop, or basically, using a laptop would be difficult, then please let me know and we'll try to accommodate you or work out individual accommodations as best as possible. There is no one-size-fits-all plan. We're trying to basically stuff as many people into the plan as possible and deal with any contingencies such as, it turns out that my internet connection at home is terrible. Those kinds of things. So we'll try to do that. The other way that I'm considering doing this is, and the part that probably might be easiest for us, if trying to do in-person meetings turns out to be a complete poop storm, is that watch meetings will have discussion boards regarding that, and then I will schedule during class times essentially extra office hours that you can dial into and ask me questions about for the homework. Don't know how well that will scale. Now, with regards to your lab sections will essentially be your TAs holding additional office hours for you to come in and work on those assignments. Yes? There was a question? Yes?
I just wanted to ask, for lab exercises, would we just have to go to office hours to go to demo them?
Yeah, yeah. I guess they'd just be online instead, and you can share your screen using Zoom, which is essentially the way to do it. Yes. No, but you've got one on your laptop. All modern laptops have one. You don't need it, probably, but you'll most likely need to. Microphone is more important than a webcam, especially since you're going to be sharing your screen. And again, all modern laptops are equipped with webcams and microphones these days. So, yes. Yes, those will be done, but those will be done by screen sharing, right? I'm going to do my best to try to make basically, the only difference is basically that we'd be meeting via screens rather than in person is the biggest thing. I'd be doing that for office hours and for lab sessions. I'll try, as far as this time, at the very least, I'll be logged in on this time for you guys to demo. There might be times where I'll tell you to be here to schedule some exercises, but depending on how things work in class, that might or not be possible for you, and just let me know. This first week the first week where things are canceled will essentially be crazy, but I will basically treat it as trying to get as much stuff as done. You will definitely have lectures to watch, though. So I can guarantee you that basically I will create videos for you to watch. I've got a green screen at home, I have a microphone at home, I have a camera at home. I've got much better resources than most of your other professors have for creating videos because I've been doing videos for a while for online classes. So I'm very well equipped to do this and to make sure that you guys get the education that you deserve. Yes? That's an excellent question. Next question. So no, I will address that in a bit. So what will happen with exams? So there are some solutions. The university has contracted with Proctorio. Don't know if that's a good solution or not, but the main thing that I will guarantee you is that you will not have to pay a dime extra, which is some of the things which has been some of the issues with other exam services like Examity, which require you to pay like $20 for you to be proctored. Which is fine for online courses when you're upfront about that's going to be a cost. But for here, $20 is like, a week's worth of food for you guys. I'm not gonna make you guys pay. I'm very Yeah, I'm not gonna make you guys pay for the privilege of taking an exam. But there are some things there. I'll have to figure it out on what I'm doing. Worst case scenario is that I have an exam online and basically I will simply have you, take it and just and then I'll just simply have to make it open book and I'll just make it open resource for you guys and just basically. So most likely, this is the way I imagine exams going. You log into Zoom at the aforementioned time, at basically the aforementioned class time. So it'll probably be on a Thursday at 2:00, right? You will most likely need a web camera or something, and that's just simply to verify that there's nobody else basically you're chatting with. And in that one, I'll just simply make it open book, open notes, so that basically that you have and open resources on the internet. And so long as you're basically not paying some guy on Fiverr to do your exam for you, I'll probably go in, and what I'll do is that to make sure that that's not happening, I will go in and basically spot check and ask every so often for you to randomly pick people to share your screen with me, so you know. So that's basically the least intrusive yet most effective way I can think of doing that. And then I'll just simply accept the fact that, basically the exam will have to be done online via Canvas. That's probably the easiest way, just doing it on Canvas, right? Yes.
But our exam is kind of difficult to Google the answer. I think
It is. It is kind of difficult to Google the answer for a specific thing, but Google does give you resources of like, oh crap, how do I reverse a list? type that in. Oh, Stack Overflow answer. There we go. Right. So those kind of simple questions I can't give you. So it will be an experience. It will definitely be an experience. That being said, with the exam corrections, that will probably. I was planning on doing exam corrections for you guys during lab. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'll just make that a Canvas thing. You guys will complete it, upload your answers, and I'll go through them. I'll also explain the grading that happened last night as well. Once we're done answering your questions about COVID-19 related stuff. But exams will happen. They will, and if for some reason you can't get to that, log on during the scheduled time or whatever, then I'll be as flexible as I can and basically say, and my answer will basically be, I'm delegating that issue to the TA for you to schedule them. But the point being is that we need to verify in some way, shape, or form that that your effort is your own effort, even if you are looking for stuff online, right? That's no different than it being an open book, right? And in fact, considering the way you program is typically you look for stuff online, that's not too much of a thing. And finally, I sent an email to DRS for students who require DRS. I'm not sure if they will be open or not. If they are open, then basically you'll just simply take your exam pretty much as normal. So I've tried to plan for those contingencies. Again, the exams will happen online, via Zoom. That's the way I plan on doing it. If I find a better solution, I'll let you guys know, and there will be and if there's something that doesn't require Zoom, I will basically do a mock session first. So I guess, yes, the answer is you need a webcam, but if you have a laptop, you have a webcam. If you don't have a laptop or don't have a webcam, please let me know, and I'll try to help you out as soon as I can. If it does, I'm trying to create a one-size-fits almost everybody's solution. If it doesn't fit you, you just let me know. I don't want to, impose unreasonable things on you, right? Because for some reason it's not a requirement of this university that you need to own a laptop. I don't know why. All right, other questions? All right, so with regards to grading, I got a bunch of emails that I haven't answered because it's been insane. So for the record, this past month I've been a bit disorganized. Past February I've been a bit disorganized because I bought a house and I've been spent basically all of last month working on it when I wasn't teaching and doing renovation on it. And I finally moved in last Wednesday. So now I'm finally able to actually basically dedicate all of my time to teaching now, which it's not that I wasn't doing that before, but now I can do the extra that I always try to do. So let's go ahead and talk about the grading that I did last night. So as part of midterm early alerts, I try to be a bit more aggressive than about early alerts because they don't really have an effect on your academic record or anything. So there's no penalty for me giving you a U, or no penalty provided to you for me giving you a U. I prefer to be over aggressive and hit people with false positives than to miss somebody who needed an early alert. So generally that you got an early alert if you scored below a 70 on the first exam, or if you were missing a bunch of the quizzes or text book assignments. So textbook assignment, what I did is I ran the auto grader last night, and essentially if you tried to do the stuff, if you tried to do the chapter, you got a point for that chapter. If you had a 0 for that chapter, you didn't get any points for that. So if the auto grade missed your work for some reason, then just let me know and email me and I can correct that. Again, I'll be running these auto grades again at the end of the semester. So this is just simply the grade you have now can change in that. That is your overall textbook grade. So if you do all the exercises by the end of the semester, then it will just simply be changed to a 5, right? That is basically what I'm trying to do. I want to make sure that you're participating in it. So the grade you have is that if you were to be given a final grade right now, that is what you would have in the textbook grade. That doesn't mean it can't be changed. It will be updated if you do the work before the end of the semester. It will be updated. Make sense? right? So it's not like you're getting grade A and grade B, and your textbook is the average of those. No, it's just simply, I will update the grade as you do that. Okay, that makes sense? Any other questions about the grading or like? So as far as exam corrections, I'll work on, that will be something online. And I've also posted your newest assignment, so let's go ahead and just talk about what assignments you'll have over the next couple weeks, because certainty is a great thing to have. So I want you guys to be a bit certain about about the next 2 assignments that we're going to do. Okay? The next 2 assignments I like to do, doing is the Hawaiian pronunciation guide, and Kat is really a good resource for that one. She lived in Hawaii for, I think, a decade or something, so her Hawaiian pronunciation is actually quite good. So the Hawaiian pronunciation guide is one of those programs that I found at Nifty Assignments from SIGSI. It's really fun. The Hawaiian language, and basically what we're doing is that you're going to give me a word like humu nuku nuku apua, and then you're going to give me the phonetic pronunciation for that word, for that Hawaiian word. You're going to detect whether it's a valid Hawaiian word. Not like, is it like a real Hawaiian word, but does it follow the Hawaiian word rules and letters? And then you're going to give me the pronunciation for it. There's 12 vowel characters in Hawaiian, so it's pretty small in terms of the character set. But, and we've got very specific sounds. And again, what this is that this is the Hawaiian state fish. So, and what this is basically, you take in a string and then you got to look ahead and figure out what's going on with this string. Like, okay, if I have a vowel, an A here, I got to look at the next vowel, or next letter, and see if it's also a vowel, because AI won't be I-E, it will be I. So here's like and I give you an example run through of it. Like, enter a vowel word to pronounce, invalid. V is not a valid Hawaiian character. Enter a Hawaiian word to pronounce. Aloha, and it will say aloha is pronounced aloha. Do you want to enter another word? And then notice he entered another word. Enter yes, yes, no, or no. And then kakahaika, or kakahika, or kakahiaka. So, and basically this is just a sample run through, and if you can match that, that is good. So that's going to be due so I have that due in 10 days. This basically is kind of the whole mastery of strings kind of thing. And the next assignment that you're going to be working on is because why be worried about one natural disaster when you can be worried about 2, is the hurricane tracker assignment, which is actually quite awesome. This is what it looks like when you're done with it. Which is a lot more intimidating than it looks. We're getting into the point where programs look a lot more difficult than they are. So this one isn't actually that bad. This, believe it or not, is just using turtle graphics. All it does is that it replaced the turtle with the hurricane symbol. And then, what? Yeah. So yeah. And it's basically changing color based on this hurricane category. So, basically what you're going to be, and this will be this assignment that we'll focus on will cover file reading. Which is what I plan on going into today, because file reading and text processing are they're linked. And then once we do that, we're going to do probably regular expressions or other things. So actually, yeah, pig will probably come after that once we're done that. But the hurricane tracker and the Hawaiian pronunciation I posted if you guys want to get a head start on that. And since we do have but once we learn more about the case in Philly, that will probably be whether or not, again, my guess is next week at the latest. Princeton already announced that, they announced yesterday that they would be suspending classes next Monday. So, all right. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about, U.S. copyright law. All right. Mickey Mouse. One of the most well-known characters in all of, one of the most well-known characters in, out there, created by the Walt Disney Company, which is also one of the biggest media conglomerates, megacorps out there. Walt Disney, by the way, is freaking huge now. Okay? I mean, I say that, but you don't quite understand how big it is. Let's see. The Walt Disney Company is a entertainment conglomerate. Disney American Animations. The company is known for its film studio division, Walt Disney Studios, which includes Walt Disney Pictures, Walt Disney Animation, Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm, 20th Century Studios, Searchlight Pictures, and Blue Sky Studios. Also, it's got Disney Media Networks, parks. Also, through this, they own ABC, Disney Channel, ESPN, Freeform, FX, and Nat Geo. It's disgustingly large. We can talk again. I don't like to get into like politics and whether or not companies should be broken up or not. That's actually outside my research field as to whether or not that is. But we can all say, without a doubt, that this is huge and absurdly so. Company units, lists of assets owned by the Walt Disney Company. It is quite the list. All right. So one of the things, though, is that basically that large companies like to do is protect their assets, like this guy over here, Mickey Mouse. And namely, the big thing about that is copyright law, intellectual property. Now Disney what they do is that basically when it looks like Mickey's going to go and come into public domain. So basically, the way copyright law works is that basically you develop some kind of work, right? Basically, you're saying, this is my work, you can't steal it, right? Now, copyright law could be something like 20 years. 20 years, and then anybody can use it. Like, I create this character, it's wildly popular, and if the copyright law lasts for 20 years, says this, if my copyright lasts for 20 years, then it's 20 years until you can use it, right? And then at that point, it will enter what's called the public domain, which means anybody can use it. Examples of public domain characters are like, let's see, Long John Silver, right? Fictional character, main antagonist of the novel Treasure Island. Notice that was written in 1883. So one of the big things that companies like to do, that large companies, and Disney is the only one, when one of their characters are threatened into entering the public domain, they'll typically lobby Congress into passing a law to extend copyright. Currently, I believe it's its copyright now lasts for life plus 75 years, I believe, or something pretty large like that. It is absurdly long. Now, things do fall out of copyright eventually. And one of the places you can find a lot of copyright free works is Project Gutenberg, where basically if it's hit the public domain, you can find it at gutenberg.org, which I'll be using extensively for our file reading stuff. Now, Project Gutenberg basically started as the focus here is on older works where the U.S. copyright has expired. Everything is gratis, meaning free, libre, meaning free in the free speech movement, in the free speech or free software movement, there's basically, they like to say free as in beer, free as in speech, right? Free as in free beer, free as in free speech. So that's what gratis means. Gratis means it's free as in somebody offering you free beer, and libre as in your free speech. You're free to do with it as you wish. So that means that basically, if you wanted to make a story about Long John Silver saving the world from a Martian invasion, like in H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, you totally can do that because both those works are out of copyright. Right. So this also means that basically I can totally do this. I can totally, do this. So let's go ahead and grab Dracula. Okay. Dracula's out of copyright by Bram Stoker. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead and download a plain text file, and we're going to start reading through it. So this is pg345.txt. It's a .text file. And it will look something like this, and it's just simply a text document. And I believe I discussed this. There are two types of files that computers can deal with. So let's go ahead and put this into. So first, you'll want to download this file and put it wherever you're going to be putting your Python file. It's got to be in the same folder. So over here, I'm going to put it into my classroom file, ITP, and then Spring 2020 folder. And I'm going to call it Dracula.txt. So we have two types of files, okay? We have text files, which are files that basically can be opened in a text editor. They look like this, right? I downloaded it. I can go over here into Classroom, ITP, Spring 2020, Dracula.txt, and now, right, there's my file, and I can read through it using a text editor. It means that basically it's stored in regular kind of stuff, right? It's human readable things. The other type of files are binary files, which are like PDFs, which are not human readable. Like, for instance, if I were to open up a PDF, this PNG file. Not a PNG file, it says. Oh, like this, let's go ahead and open up this PDF file. Official board minutes. So if I open this with, say, with Guinea over here, a text editor file, it says that it does not look like a text file or the encoding is not supported. So let's go ahead and open in terminal, vi out.pdf. It's not precisely human readable. These are instructions for a PDF reader as to how to render this file. That's the difference between a text file and a binary file. Now, in other programming languages, reading files can be a pain in the tuchus. So but for Python, it's actually quite straightforward. So what we do is that we're going to create our file over here. I'm going to create this file. I'm going to call it file reading example.py, and I'm going to put it into the same folder where I saved Dracula, because they need to be able to know where to look for each other. And if I save them in the same folder, I don't have to give it any instructions. Yes.
Can you show where the Dracula file is again?
What?
Can you show where the Dracula file is again?
Yeah. I'm putting it into online. You mean? Yeah. Give me a second. So I'm just going to put it into this folder with Dracula.txt. So to get the Dracula file, if you want it, go to Project Gutenberg, which is Gutenberg.org, named after the Gutenberg printing press, and just simply search Dracula in the search field. And you'll want to download the UTF-8 plain text file over here, the last option. Why this? These are binary files over here. These are meant for ebook readers. This is meant to be read by anything and any human. So UTF-8, again, that's just simply an encoding there. So you can just click on it. If it doesn't ask you to download it, then just simply save this page by pressing Control-S or Command-S, or right-click over here and then simply say Save Link As, and then that will be able to download it. And either rename it Dracula.txt or remember that it's called PG345.txt. Make sense? Right? So I'm going to go ahead and open up, so that's next to me, the Dracula text, as well as the file reading example. Now, I'm just going to show you, don't write this part down. I'm going to show you what I mean by it being annoying in other languages. And in Java, it's something annoying like this. Public static void main string args file f is equal to new file what's it called? It's called Dracula.txt, right? Scanner is equal to new scanner f, and then to read the file I have to do something like this. And this is after years of, I didn't learn how to do this until years afterwards. The way I was taught was to use a buffer file reader, which was just awful. While scanner dot has next line string line is equal to scanner dot next line system.out.println line. So that's how you'd have to do it all in Java, to print out the file line by line. It's a pain. File reading was when I felt figuring out how to do file reading in Python was when I fell in love with Python. I realized that it was the language for me. Data is equal to open Dracula.txt. So open takes in two parameters. To open a file for reading, all you have to do is say this. To open the file and have it ready to read, you just simply say this. Data equals open Dracula.txt in quotes, the file name you have in quotes. If you give it the file name, it's going to assume that the file name is in the same exact folder that this guy is in. If not, otherwise you'll have to give it a path, which is something we'll discuss later. Open Dracula.txt, and then you got to tell it for what purpose you're opening the file. There's essentially three modes: read, there's R, W, and A. Read is fairly straightforward. It means I'm going to read the file. W means I'm going to write, which will create a new file and write it, and if the file already exists, overwrite it. And A means append, which is that I'm going to create a new file if it doesn't exist, or if it does exist, I'm just going to tack the data onto the end of it. For right now, you just have to worry about the R mode, and that's like 90% of the cases. We're going to be reading a file rather than writing. So I'm going to data Dracula. So that's it. That's all I have to do to open it. Simply say Dracula.txt read. And you can use double quotes or single quotes if you want. Doesn't matter. Python's cool like that. Okay? And then I guessed, and here's the thing. That was what I read on how to open a file. Then I was like, well, how do I iterate through the file and print it out line by line? And I didn't bother looking that up. I just I'm going to be so shocked if this works. It should work, but it's probably not going to work. For line in data, print line. And that was the moment I fell in love with Python, which simply said, for the line in the data, print out that line. So what does it do? So first let's figure out what data is. Let's go ahead and sorry, let me not delete that because you were writing it down. That was really a jerk move on my part. Print data. Let's print that out. It says it's a text IO wrapper. What is IO? IO means input output. So basically it's just a way of wrapping the file up, ready to be delivered to us. It does a whole lot of magic in that one line, because opening the file is a very specific operation, but turns out the vast majority of the time you don't want anything special done. You just want to open it so you can read it. And so what we can do, so then when we throw it into a for loop, it says we're going to look at one line at a time. Now you'll notice when I'm running this that we get that basically it comes out double spaced, right? Or double line spaced. And this is because that every line in this text file has a new line at the end of that. Let me go ahead and show you. Right? So I just turned on a mode in my text editor that lets me see unseen characters, specifically CRLF, carriage return line feed. That is old typewriter stuff but basically that's the way Windows interprets a line ending. In fact, if you really are able to look down here and you squint your eyes, it will say mode CRLF. It identified this is the way that my text file ends its lines. You don't really have to worry about that anymore, but basically this translates to a /n. These bolded characters over there, they translate to a /n. So when it reads a line, when we're reading a line in the file, it's reading the Project Gutenberg ebook of Dracula by Bram Stoker, new line. So then I print that out, so it prints out the new line, and then it prints out the line for ending the print statement. That's why it's double spaced. When we do our printout. Gini, let's open this again. So now so let me go ahead and turn off these things because it's kind of, show white space instead. All right. So that's pretty cool. So what can we do with this kind of thing? Well, what we can do is that we can take a look and see how this works line from line. Let's go ahead and operate and let's count how many lines are in this file. First off, it kind of does tell me, right, that there are, in my file editor, that there are 1,597 and 4 lines in there. Well, actually, 15,973 if I delete that last empty line. So we can count that and see how many lines there are. So let's do that. Num lines is equal to 0. Every time we read a line, we'll just simply say num lines is equal to num lines plus 1. And then in the end, print num lines. This will get us how many things. And notice that comes up with the answer right over there. Okay? But, that's not really an interesting thing. So let's talk about Dracula. Okay? Count Dracula is a very famous figure, first off. Who is Count Dracula named after, anyway? What is the historical origin for the character of Count Dracula? Yes. Yes, Vlad Tepes, the Impaler. That is who Dracula is based off of. Vlad the Impaler. And if you don't know who he is, you can probably guess what his hobbies included based on his title. He was not a very nice man at all. That was how he executed his enemies. Vlad Tepes. Vlad the Impaler, known as Vlad the Impaler or Vlad Dracula, was the voivode of Wallachia 3 times, was considered one of the most important rulers in Wallachia, and is a national hero of Romania. So the second son of Vlad Dracula. Very interesting thing because, of course, he was around during the whole fall of the Roman Empire. Wait, 1400s? The fall, mid-1400s, fall of the Roman Empire? What are you talking about, Professor Rosen? You failed at history, I guess. Well, that's actually a matter of some debate because for some reason, when we talk about these guys, the Byzantine Empire, for some reason we don't consider them to be the Roman Empire even though they followed Roman law. Right? It survived the fragmentation of the Western Roman Empire. This was the Eastern Roman Empire. And it survived until it fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453 when the Turks captured the city of what was then Istanbul and is now, conquered Constantinople, which is now Istanbul. But that's nobody's business but the Turks. So, anyway, so let's go ahead and talk about, he basically took this character and, adapted him and made this kind of vampire thing. Now he created a bunch of the vampire tropes here, but there were things that there's a number of tropes for vampires that didn't exist. Like, for instance, Dracula was able to go out during the daylight. He was just not very good at vampiring during the daylight. So that was one of the big things, if I remember this correctly. So anyway, let's go ahead and see how many times Dracula actually appears in this text file. I'm going to start by trimming this file so that we just have the text, because notice over here we have Dracula a lot. So I'm going to just basically trim this part. And I'm going to just delete everything that's right before chapter 1, right? So I'm going to delete that just simply so we can count accurately how many times Dracula appears in the text of Dracula itself, as opposed to counting the time it happens in the chapter. So now delete the bottom over here, which is just simply the licensing, which is that basically this is Project Gutenberg. You can pretty much do what you want with it. So here, up to the end, save the file, and now let's go ahead and maybe we'll say, so let's go ahead and call this Count Dracula is equal to 0. God, I didn't even intend that. That's hilarious. So the count of Dracula is equal to 0. And basically what we could do is that maybe we could do line.contains. So let's talk about that string method, contains. Let's see, string contains Python. I believe that's a method for strings. Oh, no, we don't. I forget. It's not contains. Right, me working in Java too much. So if Dracula in line.lower, right? So we're going to convert it all to lowercase, just in case Dracula is in all caps, right? Or somewhere. So if Dracula is in line lower, count Dracula is equal to the count of Dracula plus 1. And print out the count of and then print out count Dracula. So that appears 35 times. I find that hard to believe. Let's go. So obviously I must have done this wrong. So let's go ahead and see Dracula. Find 1. Certainly feels like more than that. So why am I only counting 35 Draculas? Yes? Is it not? I mean, I asked for it to be lower. Right? So let's see if we get Dracula. That's going to get 0. Dracula. Let's see what happens over here. We should get 0 over here. If I just simply do Dracula in line because that should always be uppercase like that. Let's see how many we get. We get 33. Ha ha ha. If Dracula is in line. So let's go ahead and maybe print out, yes. This is true. I was going to get to that. But very good. This would only check if Dracula appears in the line once. So let's go ahead and print out wherever Dracula occurs. So we'll print out, if Dracula's in the line, we'll print that out. And we'll see what lines. Dracula, Vivo Dracula. The Draculas were Dracula, so let's see. Is there more than 30? Let's see. Find all in document. 35 matches for Dracula. Apparently, Dracula only appears 35 times in the novel. So let's go ahead and see vampire. $18 times in that. But let's go ahead and talk about, what about count in line dot lower. This will make the entire line lowercase. So that's what's happened. So while Dracula isn't mentioned a lot of times, he's often referred to as Count Dracula, or the expression on the Count's face was so hellish that for the Count's face, his waxen hue became greenish yellow by contrast. Lowered himself from the window to follow the Count. The Count. So they often refer to makes sense, they often refer to this guy as the Count rather than just Dracula, right? So we can do this kind of find replace that you would do with other text files, which is fairly interesting. So that is interesting. Now notice another thing that happened when we were doing Dracula. When I was searching for Dracula in this, was that basically that we have, that we would get, let's see, the Draculas were, right? We get Draculas over here, and that's caught by this. This gets counted because when we say it's in this, we're saying, does the string D followed by an R, followed by an A, followed by a C, followed by an U, followed by an L, followed by an A, followed by an S, followed by an A, does that exist? Don't care if it's followed by an S or not, or space, or whatever. As long as it's in there, that's what matters. Okay? Now, one of the things that we also that we can kind of measure is how many words are in a document as kind of a go-to for how long this will take you to read. So performing a word count is kind of big. Is kind of an important thing. So let's go ahead and we can actually split up a line into individual words. So let's take a look at that. So now we're going to learn about the split method. So let's take a look at it in the terminal before we start applying it. Python 3. So let's go ahead and I'm going to search for a string. Douglas Adams, big mistake. Let's see. Let's see if I can follow this. Yep. All right, let's go ahead and take this quotation mark or quotation out here and store it as our string. S is equal to the story the story so far. In the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and widely been regarded as a bad move. So that's our string from Douglas Adams. So now what we can do is that we can one of the things we can do with strings besides iterating through individual things is that we can use something called the split function. S.split without any parameters, does something very interesting. The story so far, so we create a list, and it creates the story so far in the beginning. Notice that none of these guys have any spaces, by the way. Inside, none. It created a list of strings. None of those individual strings, by the way, have any spaces. What it does is that it looks for a specific string or a specific character, and split will cut up the string in question based on that specific character. So here we're splitting this up by spaces. So it splits up the story because there's a space between them, and if it splits up story so because there's a space in between them, and then it splits up far colon and in because there's a space between them. Makes sense for how split works? It splits it up, everything up by spaces, specifically by white space. So if I were to go in and replace this, and then if I were to do s.split, so notice I put in a /t over here, which is a tab. It split that off. So it takes any white space that it detects and splits it, which is very useful. So this is one way we can basically take any sentence and split it up into individual words and try to say, hey, this is where the words occur. So what we can do over here is now we can apply this to our file over here. So we can take our line, over here. Let's just comment this out. For line in data. If data dot, so let's go ahead and say words is equal to line dot split. So I take the line, split it up into words, and now we'll print the words, the list of words. So we've got a lot of Mr. Morse, who had sunk to the ground, leaned on his elbow, holding his, and so it just basically splits everything up that would be separated by words, which is pretty cool, or sorry, split by spaces into individual words, which is great because now we can actually, we've taken a line and we split it up into individual words. Now we can figure out how many words are in each line. Count words, the lesser known vampire. Words is equal to line.split. Count words is equal to length, or is equal to count words plus length of words. And so we can do that. So there are 160,814 words in the novel Dracula. And by the way, this works for basically, if I want to run this on any other file, it's not particularly hard. The other file I have over here is, let me go ahead and copy this guy over, Shakespeare, which is the complete works of Billy Shake over here. So, complete works of William Shakespeare. This text file, Shakespeare.txt. By the way, if you need a literature elective, in my opinion, like you need the humanities elective that you need to take, my personal advice to you is you should take a Shakespeare class. Now, you may think that Shakespeare is dry and boring and terrible to read. And I will agree with you on the very last point that it's terrible to read because it's a freaking play. You don't read plays, you watch plays. That's the only way that you do that. So Shakespeare should be mandatory movie watching essentially once a week. That's essentially what you do with a Shakespeare class. Essentially, you watch a movie once every week or a week and a half. It's very, and that's a lot easier than reading, And, you get like performances like by Patrick Stewart for some stuff. It's really fun, You'll find that basically a lot of actors do love to do Shakespeare because Shakespeare, if he didn't come up with the trope, he certainly codified it, right? So it's a very, very interesting to see basically that, this is where he came up with that general idea. So here all I did was replace Dracula with Shakespeare, and now I count the words, and 959,000 words in the Shakespeare file. All right, so, and if you try printing out something like this, by the way, print words, something like this. First off, in idle, it will take a while. Okay? But also, furthermore, you go up and you're like, didn't it miss something? This does not look, Wooer is not the beginning of the file. Right? It should be like, this is a Project Gutenberg thing. So, let's talk about caches and size. So, So first off, notice when I double-click on this file. The first time I double-clicked on that file to open it, there was actually a loading bar that said it was loading up this Shakespeare file and it was taking a bit of time. It's a huge file for this, and you notice that it's a bit laggy in terms of it feels a bit laggy to try to scroll through it. Took a second for it to identify that I wanted to close it, as opposed to Dracula.txt over here. So that was a lot smoother. So let's go ahead and open up Shakespeare. Well, first, let's take a look at the file size. Dracula is less than a megabyte. Shakespeare is 5.7 megabytes. So we're in Russian literature territory here. So this is a very large file. If you try to open up a file this large in an IDE or something, it will. If you write a file that's this big, first, A, what the heck is wrong with you? But B, the IDE will complain to you and say, I can't analyze a text file that big for syntax and stuff like that. Furthermore, if you try to print this out, you're going to get into issues. So let's go ahead and look at my terminal. Preferences. So if I go into profile command, scrolling, scroll back limit to 10,000 lines. Almost every single IDE, text editor, whatnot, or your terminal has for memory reasons, it has a limit to how many lines it's going to store in memory. So if you're printing out more than 10,000 lines, you're probably hitting that limit, right? Where basically, it might look like where part of the file is missing if you're printing out a big file. And when I'm talking about big, and big in this case actually means more than a couple megabytes. That's what big is. Like more than literally 2 megabytes is a big file, a big text file. Then it's going to basically truncate a bit of it. And what we'll do is we'll throw out the least recent line to replace and put in the most recent line at the bottom, if it needs room for that. So that's why when I go through this file, it's not going to be particularly large. Now, most of the time, though, when we're not dealing with like text files like this, we're going to be dealing with specific types of files that hold data. And that's what's probably most relevant for you. Specifically, we're going to be dealing with something called CSV files. So let me go ahead and open up Calc, which is the free version of Excel, right? If you are working in, if you're not in computer science, you probably have worked with this at some point or another, right? And if you're in computer science, you kind of dread having to work with this thing because I could just code instead, right? So this is a spreadsheet, and typically the files you store are in XLS, right? .xls files or .xl files, you know. But let's just go ahead and create a file let's go with ID or let's go with time temp. Right? Simple file over here. We're going to go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then just simply create a bunch of, so we're going to create a bunch of samples like, okay, 20, 20.2, 21.1, 21.4, 20.8, 20.6. So I'm just going to create basically a couple of samples over here. 23, 24. So basically, at some time, I recorded this temperature. Okay. Don't know what the thing was, right? But generally, you're going to get, when you're working with Excel files, you generally track data like this, where you have some rows, some columns. Okay, there we go. So here's my data. Now, typically when you save a file, right, you're going to be saving this sucker as a spreadsheet file. Typically, let's see over here, a .xls or a XLSX. But here, it doesn't matter right? It doesn't matter how you store this kind of thing. But here what I'm going to do is I'm going to store this as a text CSV file. And this is an option that exists in all spreadsheet applications. And so the limitations of a CSV file is that it's a text file, which means that if you've got pretty graphs in there, it's not going to capture the graphs or anything or save that stuff. But if you want to output your text or your data, like your raw data like this, so you can now you can do stuff in Python over it, rather than relying on, the programming language built into here, or you want to, throw it into Python's plotting functions and that kind of stuff, you can. So let's just go ahead, and I'll talk about what a CSV file is in a minute. So let's go ahead and throw it into the same folder. So ITP, Spring 2020, and I'm going to call this temp data.csv. So first off, I should mention that the only thing a file extension does, it tells the computer what it should expect to be in there, right? A .exe means the computer should expect it's a Windows executable. If it's a .xls file, then it's a Windows Excel file and should be opened with Microsoft Excel, right? If it's a text file, it should be opened with your text editor. If it's a Java file, it should be opened with the Java editor. And if it's a Python file, it should be opened with whatever. But it doesn't change what's inside by just changing the name of the extension. That's just part of its name. It just helps you figure out what was in there. So yeah, may have formatting or content that cannot be correctly saved. That's fine. Use the text CD file. And then it says field delimiter, string delimiter. There we go. Boom, it's a CSV file. So now I open this up, tempdata.csv. If I were to open this up in here, it's just going to open this back up. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to open this with my text editor. Control open. And I'll just simply go to textdata.csv. And now look at this. So it just basically saved that file in a text format. Not as a binary file, which is what an Excel file is, but as a text file. So we've got temp time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the entries we have, and then the temperatures we read. So let's go ahead and write a program that will calculate the average temperature that we read. Make sense? So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and create a file, new CSV example.py. Again, I'm going to put it in the same folder in ITP, spring 2020. Save. So we open it just like any other file. So the data is in temp, in open temp data.csv. And then we need to do, and we're going to put it in read mode. And now let's just go ahead and iterate through it so that we can print it out, so that we can check that we're reading it correctly. That's the first thing you should do when you're reading a file. Check to make sure you're reading it correctly. For line in data, print line. And so here we're printing out the data that we had created in the CSV file. Right, if you need data, you could just make a file, a text file that looks just something like this, has a couple entries there, and time and temp at the top. So now let's work, and now let's use the split function to our advantage. Line, so for line in data, line is equal to line dot split. So I'm replacing the line that I read with, now split, if you don't provide any arguments, splits over white space. Here what I'm going to do is I'm going to split up by comma because it's a CSV file. CSV stands for comma separated values, which is the default way data is separated, right? Time and temp is separated by comma. 1 and 21, 2, 21. So now if I separate it like this, so if I separate it using the comma, split it using the comma, if I print the line like this, I get time, temp, new line. 1, 21, new line. 2, 21.2, new line. And so on and so forth. All right. So now let's talk about figuring out the average. First and foremost, in this data, right, there's a non-number field, right? You've got time and temp. If I want to do the average, I have to add up all these numbers over here, right? And then divide by the number of numbers I added up. But notice over here that we've got time and temp at the top, right? Let's go ahead and print out the first field. So print line. So I'm going to print out, rather than line, I'm going to print out line 0, the first entry of every line. It's going to do time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all that. And if I do comma line 1, print out this. So there's a couple ways we can get around this, because I don't want to try to add temp to 21. It will do bad things if I try to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is there's a couple ways I can avoid this. The first is that I could just go into my data and remove that, right? That's one way to do it. Yes? It printed it out and made it double-spaced or double-lined, right? Notice over here it printed out that new line as a new line. That's what happened to it. Another thing I can do is that I can say, hey, if line if line 0 equals time, continue, which is a magic word that simply says skip this this line of the loop, this section of the loop, and move on to the next one. Or I can say, hey, if line 0 doesn't have time in it, then I can do the others. I can do the math I want to, right? Another way you can do it, and this is my personal favorite, is the first line has it, so you just create a slice from index 1 to the end. Make sense? there. So that way I don't have to worry about putting in an if statement or altering my data or something like that. So let's go ahead. Time is equal to int line 0, but we don't really need that. But I'm going to go ahead and convert those into two things. And then our temp is equal to float, because we're dealing with decimal numbers, line 1. Sum of temps is equal to 0. Temp. Sum of temps is equal to sum of temps plus temp. 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 Print sum of temps num of temps, how many are there, is equal to 0. Num of temps plus equals 1. Run it. Sum of temps divided by num of temps. It says, it says I can't slice it. You can't slice this data, which is unfortunate. So what I'll do is I'll just simply say, hey, if time in line continue, which will skip that. Invalid iter for base 10 time. Oh, right, if time in line continue. And so then we get our average temperature for our reading. The mistake I had there was I was looking for time with a lowercase t, but it's time with an uppercase T. So that's why I was having an error there. And so what this says is that, hey, if your line has time, continue. Otherwise, split it up into the two fields. Take your first field, your second field, add your temperatures up, count the number you have, and then use those to create your average. All right, so with that, stay well. Don't let anybody cough on you too hard. All right, and take it easy.